opposed their claims that all those who collaborated with the Japanese during the Second World War deserved to be granted amnesty. They also said that these collaborators were just coerced to help and surrender to the Japanese, to shield those Filipinos behind them, when in fact, those Filipinos they told they were fighting for have become the ones who severely suffered from starvation and abuse in the hands of Japanese. Those in the position mostly did the legislature and leaders such as Laurel and Rojas had served in the Japanese-sponsored government. Although many were saying they are not a puppet by how they faced down Japanese many times and how it is not showing their actions, but they were clearly opportunists and only enriching themselves while civilians suffer. Including those who were granted amnesty, most of it were in the position politics. So it was kind of fishy and suspicious to us that Ross proclaimed this amnesty in order to just get away with the issues and treason they were inclined to.
I agree that President Rojas proclaimed amnesty, but the Filipino collaborators do not deserve it because it is a policy that allows for people who have committed crimes to be pardoned and released from prison. Our criminal suspect will receive full amnesty from the President, allowing them to resume their regular lives. The President believes that this will be the answer to the nation's drug issue. We disagree that they should have been granted amnesty because they were traitors and have broken the law, and those who committed those crimes ought to be held accountable. We believe that it served as a tool to hide corruption and human rights violation in the country. We believe that it is a means by which the President can create a false image of being a reformist president while he continued to be corrupt and abusive towards civilians. We believe that this amnesty will not lead to any positive change in our country, but rather only serve as a way for President to continue his reign of terror over his people.
According to their claim, Laurel was coerced to declare war on the United States. Japanese asked Laurel to command Filipinos to ally with Japan, and Laurel convinced and deceived the Japanese that might be disastrous because most Filipino were allied with the US. They also stated that Laurel's intentions and motives were misinterpreted by few people. He continued to do what was right because he believes that he can make a difference in leading the Philippines during the invasion of the Japanese. However, Filipino people had a choice not to collaborate with the Japanese, just like the Philippine resistance movement, which opposed the Japanese. According to the article Military History Now, many Filipinos agreed to collaborate with the Japanese, often under constructions from the exiled government in hopes of securing independence or protecting the people. Meanwhile, hundreds of others like Wenceslao Q. Vinsons, Marcos V. Marking Agustin, and Macario Peralta took up arms and organized resistance. The efforts of the brave guerrilla forces throughout the Philippine Islands severely hampered the Japanese and greatly assisted U.S. forces as they liberated the Philippines in 1944 and 1945. With the help of the guerrillas, MacArthur's troops killed an estimated 381,550 enemy troops, captured 115,755 more, and destroyed nearly all of Japan's remaining combat aircraft and naval vessels. Therefore, the Filipino had the choice to join the Philippine resistance movement to fight for their country. In addition, forced collaboration is not collaboration. Voluntary collaboration as a means of national survival and to tide over our people to better times is not punishable. Laurel, 1943. Forced collaboration is still collaboration. They have a choice if they will be collaborating or cooperating. Instead of commanding the Filipinos to be an ally of the Japanese, they should convince Filipinos to cooperate, planning on how to liberate themselves from the Japanese occupation.
According to their claim, all Filipinos were victims of the Japanese occupation. which they highlighted that Filipinos were just caught in the middle of the war of the Japanese and American conflict. That is why the former President Manuel Rojas granted amnesty to the Filipino collaborators, as according to their Proclamation Number 51, under the People's Court Act, three classes of indictments were presented. All Filipinos were in fact victims of the Japanese occupation, and if that is the case, then Filipino collaborators also have been seen as victims. In contrast, it is not acceptable to grant them amnesty when they actively aid the Japanese soldiers. A victim should never forget what it's like to be mistreated and abused. Additionally, seeing the brutality and inhumanity of the Imperial Japanese is sufficient evidence that no one should support or comfort those who harm their fellow countrymen. They can take better stands by fighting for rights and defending their fellow Filipinos who are unable to stand on their own two feet than by siding with the oppressors. Collaboration is not a good strategy for ending the war. Rather, it just demonstrates that people who allow themselves to be seen as can be easily swayed off, giving the Japanese an easy access to control people, where instead we can be each other's weapon and protector. Leading figures in internal politics who had benefited greatly from the 1948 amnesty, like Senator Camilo Osayas and former Makapili Vice Supremo Pio Duran, were actively supporting efforts to free the Japanese war criminals. Additionally, an American communist and prominent fighter who had been captured a year before witnessed the collaborators exit from the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa prison on the day they were freed. According to them, as prisoners, the collaborators have been tolerated, their identities blurred in the orange mass of the prison population, but on the day the release group marches to the control gate, carrying their rolled up possessions, the memory of their wartime behavior surges back. From the upper windows of the buildings, water and missiles are poured down upon the collaborators. Prisoners trained at the bar screaming "Taksil, Taksil," or "Traitor, Traitor." There is more respect for the thief and the murderer here than for the traitor. The information provided with the sources clearly demonstrate that Filipino collaborators, especially those who rose to position of authority within the government, do not deserve the amnesty that has been granted to them. This is because the collaborators ignored the deaths of the Filipinos at the hands of the Japanese, as well as the actions of the Filipino collaborator soldiers who merely claimed to be following orders in order to win the trust of the Imperial Japanese. This simply exemplifies the dejected outlook of the Filipino collaborators, who might have a better perspective and join forces with their fellow Filipinos to work toward overthrowing the Imperial Japanese.
To sum it all up, they claim that the proclamation of former President Manuel Rojas in granting amnesty to those Filipino collaborators certainly deserve to get it, except to those who did commit to the following: who took up arms against the allied nations or the guerrilla forces, who acted as spies and informers for the enemy, who committed murder, other crimes in the furtherance of the enemy's war effort, in his desire to suppress the resistance movement in the Philippines. However, it is clear that the victims of Japan's imperialism are still oppressed and victimized by oppressors, the conquerors who have an intention to own or invade in this country, the Philippines. They also invade against the will of guerrilla forces. The foreign conqueror, however, is usually vulnerable in his attenuated lines of communication. The frontier is an elusive opponent. The spirit of free man thrives on oppression. In the European theater, the French Marquis has become a valiant and symbolic figure in his untiring struggle against the Nazis. Equally impressive in the Pacific is the rise of the Filipino against the Japanese invader. The Filipino guerrillas fought for the same principle as the European underground against the same background of peril, ruthlessness, and hardship, which were also mentioned that the Japan are one of the Axis power of Nazi, led by Adolf Hitler, who are also known for being dictator and who have also committed numerous atrocities, including massacres, mass rape, the exploitation of forced labor, etc. Indeed, not dissimilar of what Japans have done in this country. In one way or another, the actions of ruling class or the political elites during the Japanese and American period when they worked along with the colonizers are not dissimilar to what the next generation of political elites did during the Japanese occupation, whether it was a matter of survival or performing one's duty. Among many other reasons, the political elites in the Philippines have invariably shown their willingness to work with an occupying force. Indeed, they were just continuing a common practice or a habit, which pejoratively typifies the political elites as opportunistic, selfish, and disloyal. Jose Villarreal, the president during the wartime and on who they have clearly defended that he is not a puppet, are one of the political elites, or those who have collaborated with Japan in order to maintain the peace between the two countries. However, according to the source itself, or what they have also cited, peace and order crumbled as the Japanese soldiers continued to oppress the people. Hunger was widespread because the Japanese were confiscating food from merchants and from producers. Men were being forced to work in military bases, and those accused of supporting guerrillas and being pro-Americans were being arrested and tortured, which clearly it could not be denied that those who have collaborated with Japan imperialism, or those who are just following the Japanese demands in order to maintain peace, had resulted in nothing, as it is clear that the Japanese still are continuously oppressing the Filipino people. Additionally, they have stated that everyone is a collaborationist. But then, during the war, Secretary Jose Abad Santos, on the other hand, was left behind by the evacuated President Quezon to head the caretaker government. He was arrested by the Japanese in Carcar, Cebu, subjected to grueling interrogation, and asked to swear allegiance to the Japanese flag. Justice Abad Santos told his captors, "To obey your command is tantamount to being a traitor to the Japanese and my country. I would prefer to die than live in shame."